Hello, I'm Tammy Stoneman. I am a fourth year student at Algoma University. I'm in the social work program. I am in my placement right now with for Safer Places, FASS, social work practice. The topic today is Sanism, mental health, and ableism. I am going to touch on stereotypes as well as stigma in this presentation. But before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge the land we live on per the Robinson-Huron Treaty. We are gathered on the traditional territory of Anishinaabe nations. So let's go forward. What we're going to do today is we're going to define Satanism. We're going to look at some of the realities of Satanism. We're going to define mental health, mental illness, and stigma. Mental health and mental illness are two different things. Realities of mental health, mental illness, and stigma. We're going to watch a short video on mental health and Satanism. We're going to define ableism. I've got a great picture of ableism that I would like you to see. So it's at the end. And after that picture, we are going to I'm going to present ideas of how to combat stigma, stereotypes within mental health and mental illness. So let's go to the first slide. What is Satanism? Well, the picture depicts exactly what it is, but I've got a few points I'd like to make. You do not need a mental health disorder to be considered mad, crazy, weird, or other. Satanism affects anyone who does not fit in within societal norms. They're different. Satanism is one of many forms of oppression. So when I was looking at this picture that I got off of YouTube from mentalhealth.gov, I noticed two things that stood out. One is that 50% of victims of police shootings are disabled. The majority of those have psychiatric diagnosis. And also, intersectionality plays a role here because minorities are more at risk. People diagnosed with psychiatric disorders are 12 times more likely to be the victims of assault than the general population. I thought those were very interesting stats. Okay, so the realities of Satanism. Basically, Satanism is a belief system, and it focuses on difference. That is the main way Satanism oppresses people with mental illness. You do not have to have a diagnosis of mental illness, like I said before, to be judged by others. You just have to talk differently, smell differently, dress differently, or act differently. The mental illness label can be attached to you by your neighbors, your community members, your family, your friends. You may hear people say, oh, he's crazy, because someone is acting differently. Marking someone as different that sets them apart from others is stigma. That is what it is, setting people apart from others because they don't fit into societal norms. Defining mental health, mental illness, and stigma. Mental health is an integral and essential component of health. The World Health Organization states mental health is a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own abilities can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. Now, mental illness is a lot different. It occurs when the brain, just like any other organ, your heart, your kidneys, things you cannot see, is not working the way it should. It is a collection of disorders such as depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD, and anxiety. It interferes with relationships, a person's functioning, and it leads to social isolation. Now, stigma is basically a negative stereotype, the way others judge people with mental illness and how it leads to barriers to a complete and satisfying life. Okay, the realities of mental illness. People live with stigma and they have a higher risk of suicide if they have a mental health disorder. Basically, because others do not understand, so they bully. And we hear this all the time in the news. Somebody was cyberbullied and then they ended up committing suicide. Also, unfair treatment based on race, gender identity or expression, sex, age, multiple intersecting layers are all involved here, and focuses on people's identity, mostly minorities and women. Systemic oppression and discrimination are things that are in our schools, our law offices, our government, and these things need to be changed. When you have a mental illness, you're at risk for losing your job. Many people with mental illnesses have high attendance rates, high non-attendance rates, I should say. And that's unfair because they can't help it. Also, in the media, people are depicted as dangerous or violent. They're deemed unpredictable and they're feared. The Canadian Mental Health Association uses the STOP criteria to challenge people to recognize how the media stereotypes, trivializes, offends, patronizes those with mental health illness. So you can see there, stereotypes, S, trivializes, T, O, offends, P, patronizes. I like that. So now we're going to watch a short video, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it, all about what I've been talking about. I like this theory. Now, I found that video on YouTube, and you can find it as well if you want to look at it again. So right now I'm going to define ableism. So ableism is a form of oppression that pushes people down, holds them back. People have a form of difference are referred to as having a disability. Ableism devalues all human life because everyone is going to have issues with their mind or cognition or their physical body, their physical functionings, because we're aging. But does that make us any less capable? No, sometimes we have to do it a little slower. But anyways, from an ableist perspective, we are deemed different, which, like we already said, is stigmatizing, and it is discrimination. This is the picture I wanted you to see. I'm just going to read the first line or two. It is seen when people use the word retard or retarded inappropriately. Well, I don't really like that statement because I don't think using the word retard or retarded is appropriate. It's completely inappropriate. It should not be used at all. It's used to push people down, to hold them back, to make them feel bad about themselves, or, prevent them from seeking out their own goals in life. So the word retarded really bothers me, and I get a little worked up about that word, but I hope you all understood that those words are stigmatizing and they're stereotypes. So what can social workers do? Well, first off, we need to fight for social justice and equity. Identify barriers to employment. It's harder for people with mental illness or people who have been labeled to get a job and stay employed. We need to educate others about mental health issues. This is a big one for social workers because this is what we need to do. We need to keep telling everybody the story, the truth. We have to identify environmental and societal issues that contribute to mental illness. This is a really important one because depending on where you live, if you geographically, if you live in a rural or remote community, you're more likely to have a mental illness. Societal issues that contribute are things like cyberbullying, bullying in schools, bullying in the workplace. All of those things are bad for people with mental illness. They're bad for everybody, but for people with mental illness, it's worse. We need to become a mental illness ally, educate others about stigma and stereotypes. Finally, I think support and empowering those with mental illness will help them. So I just wanted to say that For Safer Places has a webpage, and on that website you can scroll down and find resources if you need help. So if you're in crisis, please seek out help. Call a friend, call the hotlines, or go to the hospital. So that's the end of my presentation, and I want to thank everybody for listening. I know I kind of stumbled around a bit, but that's that happens. So anyways, I just want to put it out there for everybody to stay safe, social distance, and if you can, wear a mask. Thanks.